Hello YouTube, welcome back to the channel and welcome to my pro shop, and today I want to show you two must-have training aids for putting indoors, whether it be on the carpet at home or in the office. So for those of you who don't want to waste the winter months doing nothing or just hitting balls out of sheds, then I would recommend you do a little bit of putting training during the winter months. It's something you can do indoors, whether it be in your flat, in your house, or even in your office. And as long as you've got a relatively flat floor with a short carpet or a putting mat, then you're going to get something similar to what you're going to experience outdoors. But making your training halfway decent in the winter months is always a question of feedback, and if you can't afford for a golf professional to stand and watch you when you're putting, then you're going to need something else which will help you. Now, I would definitely recommend filming yourself. I told you about a couple of apps that you can download, I think in one of my earlier videos, but if you take V1 for instance, you can load it down onto your mobile telephone and film yourself, and also put rings and lines onto the software, which will actually show you if you're stable enough, if you're moving the club down the line. But today I'd really like to talk about another form of feedback, or two forms of feedback that you can use. One is the old trusty mirror. Now, we've been using these for years, and if you go onto any PGA or European Tour event, you will see professionals working with these things, because the quality of practice is always based on feedback. And when you use a mirror, you can actually see where you're standing relative to the golf ball. And this is very important. Although we haven't got any kind of standard, you have to have your head in this position relative to the golf ball, we do see that all the good putters tend to repeat the same position again and again and again, and then get used to the kind of stroke that they're going to use. So I'm going to show you how to use the mirror correctly. What I'd also like to show you is the putting cup that we use. Now, obviously you can't be digging holes into your carpet, and this is about the best thing I've found on the market. It's called the Putout, and although the white hole or the white rubber part at the front is exactly the size of a hole, this plastic piece at the back, this parabole, is actually going to allow the ball to almost lip out, go out to the side if it's not hit into the center of the hole. And I think that's a good thing. If you get one of these cheap putting cups which kind of have levers and hinge in, you're going to hole a lot of putts with that you will miss on the golf course. It's not the same with this one. In fact, this will give you a certain amount of feedback as well as to how good the putt was. For instance, it will send the ball back to you exactly the same distance as the ball would have run past the hole if there was no hole there. It's also capable of showing you what the perfect putt is. And if you hit the ball perfectly, it will actually stop in this small hole here. So that would be a way of kind of pumping up the difficulty of your practice. And as Jack Nicklaus said, you know, when he used to putt at a tee when he was practicing indoors, it made the hole look like a bucket. So if you make your practice difficult, playing will become easier. So I'd like to just basically show you how I would practice with these two devices and see how you get along at home. So as you can see here, I've set up the mirror around about a meter away from the cup. And the very first thing I'm going to do before I hit any putts at all is I'll move the ball away and just get used to taking my address position. What I've found is, even as a professional, I'm going up and addressing the golf ball slightly different every time. That means it might just be half an inch to the right or to the left, half an inch closer or further away from the ball, but you can imagine that if I'm making exactly the same pendulum movement, then I'm going to be hitting the ball with a different part of the putter every time. And obviously, as a human being, I'm going to try and correct that intuitively, which means I am making slight changes in my putting stroke every time if I address the golf ball differently every time. So before you do anything else, try and get into a routine of how you address the ball. Now, the majority of us will go behind the ball first and look for a target line, and you can use that opportunity to align your mirror. Then I would get you to make a couple of practice swings to get a feeling for the distance that you're wanting to putt. And you're going to have to make a decision where you're going to make these practice swings, either in the extension of the target line or next to the golf ball. But whichever one it is, you want to do the same thing every time. And once you've actually done that, just address the center of the mirror and see where you are standing relative to your left eye. Now, for a long time, everybody was saying that you ought to have your left eye over the ball, simply because if your center or your axis of your pendulum movement is more or less across from your nose and your shoulders are going up and down and your arms are making a pendulum movement backwards and forwards, and the deepest point in the stroke is going to be more or less under your nose. So a ball that's left of your nose for a right-handed golfer is going to be hit in the upswing, which will help to give it some topspin. So if I've got the ball under my left eye, then I know that that's going to actually hit the ball slightly in the upswing if I stay stable. What we have seen, however, is that a lot of golf professionals don't have their eye directly over the ball, although they are on a line with the ball. So they are actually standing a little bit further away from the ball than having the eye line. And the mirror will actually show you how far away you are from the ball. So if you're in the same position every time, I would say that's fine. The only thing that you'll find is that your pendulum movement will cause the putter to make a little bit more of a curve if you're further away from the ball than it would do if you were standing more with the eyes directly over the target line. And this is quite obvious because of the distance that your shoulders are away from the ball will affect how steep the pendulum movement is. Once you've actually got that position, I would do a couple of practice swings and make these practice swings a little bit harder, as if you were hitting maybe a 15-20 meter putt, and just watch your head when you're doing it. Is it stable? Is it staying where it is when you're making this movement? Or do you have a little bit of a tendency to go backwards and forwards or forwards and backwards during the stroke? Even though the putter isn't the heaviest club in the bag, it's still going to have an effect. And it's going to try and kind of pull you with it. Also, you may be intuitively turning your hips or using your legs to help you generate the speed, and that could be causing your head to wobble backwards and forwards. So using the mirror, you'll be able to see that. Once you've actually got that sorted out, the next thing is to actually look at the stroke itself. And the mirror should usually help you to see the length of stroke, whether it be that you just say, okay, how far am I taking it back relative to the lines that they put on these things, or relative to the complete mirror itself. Now, there's an awful lot of discussion out there about acceleration through the ball, and I think we're all basically in the thought that that's a good thing. However, not every person is the same, and the feeling of taking a short backswing and accelerating through the ball, I don't think will actually suit everybody. My opinion is that everybody has like an inner clock, and some people's clocks tick a little bit quicker and some tick a little bit slower. You know, the person who's really a little bit kind of hectic about everything they do, whether they're walking or when they're talking and everything else. And then there's the other guy who's just a little bit slower and a little bit more relaxed about the thing. And I think you'll actually find that the putting stroke changes just by the personality of the golfer. So if you're a little bit more of the kind of relaxed type, I think you're going to probably have a pendulum movement which goes more or less the same distance back and through during the swing. On the contrary, if you're more of a little bit kind of uptight and a little bit quicker kind of tempo, then you don't want to be taking the club back as far as you're following through. And the classic would be to take the club half as far back as you follow through. In my opinion, however, what you don't want to get is shorter than kind of half to double. So if you're only taking it back a third of the way and going 3/4 of the way, you're going to actually start hitting it. And if you're hitting it, it's probably not your shoulders which are accelerating the putters. It'll be the small muscles in your arms and hands, and they just aren't quite as reliable as using your shoulders to make the putting stroke. If you are more of the slow type and you've got this nice kind of classical 1-to-1 swing, so you're following through exactly as far as you actually took the club back, you just want to make sure that you aren't slowing down through the golf ball and therefore actually not following through as far as you took the club back. And a lot of cases, especially beginners, tend to take the club back far too far and then break the swing. And because you're only holding the grip end, when you slow down, the club will try and overtake you, and this will cause you to add loft and also usually close the club face, which obviously won't give you a very good result. So when you get back to your mirror, you want to be having a look and just seeing what is your tendency, what do you feel more comfortable with, more of a kind of a 1-to-1 or more of a kind of a 1-to-2. I've tried both techniques, and I think I'm probably a little bit more of a kind of a laid-back type, so my tendency is probably 1-to-1.5 maybe. I do tend to follow through further than I take it back, but I don't get this kind of really kind of quick, short, kind of jabby kind of stroke. Maybe the last thing to look at is then how much swing are you allowing, how much curve is there in your stroke. And the mirror that we use has actually got a red line at the bottom of it. The problem with this is because people stand at different distances away, the red line's good for one person and bad for someone else. So it's quite okay if you've got no red line on your mirror. It might even be a benefit. And just give an idea of kind of watch the kind of the heel of the club, whether it's actually moving to the inside. And if you've got a center line on the mirror, which I think virtually all of them do have, then the center of your putter or the center line on your putter should never be crossing over that. It should be coming slightly inside, back to square, and slightly inside. So that's basically all you can do with the mirror. And if you practice with the mirror regularly, then you're going to get, hopefully, a little bit more consistency in your stroke and in your starting position. Then it all comes down to getting yourself aligned, and obviously the mirror will help you with that as well, because the lines on the mirror will actually tell you what is straight. I also use the lines on the ball. Excuse me, I shall show you that if you can see. I'm using one of Callaway's new balls with the 3 lines on it. I think they've got 3 models on the market. Now obviously you can go out and buy yourself a ball and just with a little bit of a red felt tip, then put a line on the ball yourself. But I do find this helps. People who don't like lining up the ball usually have a problem seeing a straight line in the first place. And what actually happens is they line up the ball here and everything looks fine. And then when they address the ball, it looks terrible. And it looks like the ball's going in the wrong direction. And this is simply because of the way that your eyes work. Actually, your brain is getting 2 pictures and molding it into one. But when you're stood over the ball, your left eye is closer to the ball as a right-handed golfer than your right eye. So it's not quite sure what's straight, and sometimes it doesn't look very good. In fact, I have actually got myself into the habit of not really looking at the hole again once I've aligned myself, because there is a chance that my brain might say, "Ooh, is that straight?" And you don't want any doubts in your head when you hit the putt. So I would definitely recommend you, if you don't do this already, to try it again. And once you've actually aligned yourself, then ignore the hole. Don't even look at it. You know that you're straight. You know that the putter's straight. Just trust it and make the putt. And with this putt out, if the ball comes back to you, then it would have gone into the hole as well. There's always, if you get a little bit curious, a chance as well, if you look too early, that you're going to open your shoulders. So I think by these short putts, it's probably better to hear the ball falling into the hole than it is to actually watch it go into the hole. If you can't get on with that, then obviously it might be an idea to look for some kind of an intermediate target, so a little bit of grass that's discolored on the line to the hole. But I have found that lining up the ball helps a lot. And if you can just get used to it, you'll be amazed how your brain adjusts. Once you've been putting, you've hit a couple of hundred putts, then your eyes actually get used to how they stand relative to the mirror, relative to the hole, and it starts to feel far more comfortable and far more assured. The last thing that you're really looking for is getting some kind of consistency into your putts, and that's really why we want to have a target which doesn't really forgive you a lot. And the Putout is perfect here. If you don't hit it good, it's going to disappear off to the right, disappear off to the left. And if you hit it too hard, it will come back and roll past you in the backswing. Now, obviously, it's not always going to be this speed of green that you're going to putt on, but we're really looking at getting some kind of consistency. If you can hit what you're aiming at, then when you get back on a proper golf course, then you can work on distance control. And if you can keep your distance control within a meter and you're hitting what you're aiming at, then you're never going to have more than a meter second putt. And if you've been practicing them all winter, then you're probably going to hole a very high percentage of them. And by doing this, you could get rid of the 3-putt in the new year. So altogether, the first thing I would recommend is that you get used to actually standing to the golf ball the same every time. Once you can do that, decide on a stroke length and try and repeat it over and over again. Give these lines on the ball a chance. They can help you to actually align better, and your brain will get used and assimilated to this setup position if you give it enough time to do it. And finally, whatever you're aiming at shouldn't be larger or more forgiving than an actual golf hole, because you'll get your idea that you're holding all these putts, and when you get back out on the golf course, you'll just be rolling on past their lip and getting more and more frustrated with yourself because you've invested time in your putting practice. Feedback is king when it comes to practice, and whatever you're doing, you need feedback, whether it be getting yourself videoed, using putting mirrors, using a Putout putt cup, or far better is using a golf professional. Get one of my colleagues to have a look at your putting. This is the perfect time of year to do it. A lot of them now have indoor setups where they can do this indoor for you. I really can't recommend it more because you can't see yourself, and they can give you probably some tips with their experience over the years. They know what a lot of hobby golfers do wrong. I'm sure they'll be able to help you. If this video has helped you, then please hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so, and the little bell will give you notifications the next time that I post a video. Until the next time, I'll leave you my philosophy up here for a little bit of nighttime reading. Look forward to seeing you next time. Bye-bye now.